I'm so excited because today I have Addie, who's the founder and CEO of Pluie, which is the world's first self-sanitizing diaper-changing table, a concept that came to life after she became a first-time mom. Addie has been featured in Inc.'s list of female founders 100 in 2021, as well as TIME's Best Innovations of 2021. I'm so excited to talk to you today about the story of Pluie, the ins and outs of innovation, and what it's like actually creating a product and all of the challenges and struggles that come along the way. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, Anna. I'm just honored to be part of your amazing platform and share my story.
I'm so excited. I was actually, when I was reading the bio that you sent over to me, I was like, wow, she really has had a very untraditional path of how you got here. Because even from reading over the bio, I was like, damn, she's had like 7 career paths all before like her mid 30s. And I was
And there's
like,
someone,
and I was like, talk about taking the road less traveled. I feel like Robert Frost would have like a field day with you.
someone the other day called me a cat with 9 lives. It's like, it just keeps changing. But my husband calls it an accidental career path. Things just kind of kept intertwining in different ways. But I really loved having the non-traditional career path. I've learned so much and so many different people. And although he calls it accidental, I do feel what has aligned in terms of job to job was really the power of networking. And so the importance of, maintaining friendships and the network throughout different roles in your career. And you never know what it'll lead you to.
Yeah. So can you tell us about what that career path was and like where you started and like how you ended up here?
Certainly, I never thought I would develop a diaper changing table for a public school, but I was actually a physics major when I went to college and was really passionate though about food. I hadn't really cooked professionally, of course, being right out of high school, but loved cookbooks, loved reading magazines. And so after about 1.5 years in college, I dropped out to attend culinary school, which no one thought was a very good idea about 15 years ago, just considering there weren't as many options as there are today in terms of culinary careers. Social media didn't exist, et cetera. Now I think there's so many ways you can be involved in the food industry, but back then, quote unquote, it was sort of like, what are you going to do? Cook in a kitchen. And so it was a big risk for me leaving my traditional education behind, especially because I was very academic. But really wanted to pursue this. And so had a wonderful experience and then went right into fine dining and worked for Daniel Boulud and then Thomas Keller. And so went straight into really high-end cuisine. It was very cutthroat. I was in Manhattan and then in LA. And certainly some of those stories that you hear about chefs behind the scene are very true, but love the experience. Talk about a space that not many women were at during the time. I was one of the only female line chefs at one of the restaurants. And so that was really interesting also in terms of culinary culture, which I do think has shifted quite a bit. But then I left fine dining to begin working with Martha Stewart, which was a dream come true on the editorial side, as well as in advertising and sales. I had a variety of roles, spent time at her home in Bedford, which was just remarkable. And while I was working for her, I went back to school. So again, always being an academic, I wanted to get my bachelor's degree. And so went to NYU on my nights and weekends and got my bachelor's degree in my late 20s, which was also a really cool experience because I was with other students who had similar backgrounds. And so it was really neat to be learning from other people who've had, career experience versus just being an undergraduate in my early 20s. So it was a neat role, and then moved over to Illinois with my now husband and began developing food products for large CPG groups. And so that's really where my innovation itch kind of began. I had the most amazing role of developing food and beverages for places like Starbucks and Doritos. But my job, it was so fun because they would come to us with a problem and we would create something new, but then say, here, good luck, you go do it. And we didn't have to actually bring it to market, know how to sell it. Certainly there was a lot of research and strategy that went into the development on our end, but it was such an amazing opportunity to just get to understand consumer research, design thinking. And I can pause there because then things get more exciting on the culinary world. But again, it's kind of where I think I began loving innovation and had a lot of bad food ideas as well. And so that's where Pluie kind of began.
Amazing. I feel that like pivoting and adapting is such a crucial skill, not even in business, but just in life. But I feel like a lot of especially maybe like early on entrepreneurs get stuck because they're like, this one way has to work. Like they've already like in their minds, they're like, this one way has to work. And if plan A doesn't work, then like it's all game over. But realistically, that's just like not how life works. And it's not how business works either. So I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs almost like stunt their growth because they're just so dead set on like this one way has to work that they're not even staying curious and open to like the 5 other pathways that could actually be a lot easier for them to scale and to grow and just like experience new things. But I feel
For
like for you,
sure.
that's actually what led to Pluie is like you staying curious and being like, yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen, but like I'm just going to see where this takes me.
For sure. And I mean, I joke all the time, I used to bake cookies for a living, right? And now I learned about light systems, which I knew nothing about. And so I think there's power in knowledge, and there's so much access to information out there right now, even just Googling things. And so I think whether you're an expert in a field or not, if you have a great idea, believe in your ability to build a team to surround you who does has that experience. And then also, like you said, just know that you don't know what you don't know. You just have to keep going and pivoting. I always say too that, it's like building an airplane in flight, right? It's like you're just going, going, going. And I really too believe, especially with Pluie, when we first launched, if you aren't embarrassed by your first product, then you were not moving fast enough.
Yeah.
You really go, 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 and then, okay, learn from it and change. And so I've always had these kind of, quick, fast paced, I'm very impatient, which is not a
Same.
good for a mom. It's like, tie your shoes, tie them faster. But it's a good quality for an entrepreneur. And so I went from Gravity Tank, which is the consulting firm I worked at, and left in order to write my own series of cookbooks. And then I was on the Food Network. So I started on Cutthroat Kitchen, which I won, and then was a finalist on the Food Network Star when actually I was pregnant with my son. And so I filmed the entire season pregnant. No one knew until the end in the finale when all of a sudden I was, like 9 months pregnant. But it was a wild experience. I continued to cook full time for another couple of years, actually. But when my son Cooper, who was born right after the Food Network Star, was almost 1 year old, that is when I had the idea for Pluie. So I was out to lunch with my husband, and he had a diaper blowout. And so it was my first time as a new mom experiencing diaper changing in public. And right away, I was intrigued because there was no changing table in the men's room. And I didn't really think about that having children. And now still we talk to customers who don't have them in the men's room. And that's very much a conversation that's shifting, but it's just amazing to me that is still something that we need to encourage nowadays. And so I had a very difficult diaper experience, and don't need to get into the dirty details. I got back to the table where my husband was enjoying his, hamburger, and said, gosh, those are outdated. They're dirty. They're uncomfortable. I think we could make a better one. And it was a Saturday in the summer. And we, just started moving forward for just discovering if there was an opportunity to make it cleaner and more comfortable.
So at what point were you like, oh, that would be nice if there was a better version versus like, oh no, like I'm actually serious. Like this is something that I'm going to give 100% of like my life to.
Yes, good question. And I'm very transparent about this process because I think other people can learn from it. So I'm open about the financial commitment that we, put into it. So it was a Saturday. We went home. Then later that night when my son was asleep, it was a quick, easy Google, like, why haven't changing tables changed? Who makes changing tables? And then really easy to see quickly the market size, because you could say, how many Targets are there? Starbucks. And so right away recognize, wow, there's not much competition and the market is huge. And so that's hard to find, like white space innovation.
Yeah.
Very often. I do believe you can be very innovative and successful in crowded markets. There's continuously new beverages, new power bars, and they can be very successful. So I'm not like a one or the other, but I do think this kind of blank space innovation is rare to find. A patent attorney once said to me, it's like finding a purse on the side of the road. 30, 40 people will drive by it, but someone sees it and picks it up. And I think like a lot of people we talk to are like, why did I think that? Or gosh, I had that idea, right? And so I will say too, I was so afraid of sharing my idea for so long, but it's very different to have an idea and then very different to act on it. And so I will share sooner than later, because when you do, you'll get more support. And trust me, people are not going to copy you because it's flipping hard. And so at that point, I said, I will put in $5,000 of our money to see if we can work with an industrial designer, an engineer, and someone in branding and marketing to create what will become Pluie, have the industrial design. Can we actually manufacture and scale this? And then do we have a brand that can align with what we're trying to create? And so that was exciting for me because that was my own investment. And I thought, okay, if we discover we cannot make it more comfortable, more convenient, and certainly not cleaner, then we'll just abandon this. And when it got really exciting was when we did realize we could integrate the UVC light system to sanitize the entire surface in 60 seconds. And obviously all of our other first to market features like the cushion, the retractable security strap, the sleek design, the multi-purpose handles, there's a lot to Pluie beyond that. That is very loved by our customers. But that was when I said, wow, this is really different and we should invest more into it. And so I wanted to file a patent, so took out a small business loan. I then filed the patent in 2019 and got to a point where we were as far along as we could without having significant amount of capital to then take it to the next level. And what's hard about hardware, especially something this large and expensive, is that I needed hundreds of thousands of dollars in tooling, in safety and certifications and prototyping before I could even go validate the market and sell. So it was a very risky first capital raise, just saying, hey, here's what I have, here's where we're at, right? This is a great idea. Do you believe in me? Do you believe I can build a team around it? Do you believe in the market size? But this is where we're at in terms of we have a CAD file, we have a design, but we don't have much more. And so that's when I said, this could be really real. I was pregnant with my daughter and she was born on a Friday. And then on Tuesday afterwards, so a few days later, I started raising on my maternity leave. So I had 6 weeks off from the kitchen and spent that time with Claire, raising through friends and family. And I said, if I can raise at least 400,000, I will then leave my job full-time in the kitchen. And I was able to raise 650,000. And so I left my job in January 2020.
Amazing. And is there any plans to raise any more, like through like VC?
A good question. So to date, we've raised about 3.8 million. So we've had 3 raises, friends and family and seed. Next would be a larger, Series A if we go that route, versus leveraging debt potentially instead, just based upon our growth. But that would be where we would go to the institutional capital VC route. At this point, it's all been individuals or small family offices, which has been really great for us just because we have such great individual support and then really a lot of freedom for us to just move, like you said, move quickly and pivot without a lot of that oversight from a VC.
Yeah. And when you started, I mean, clearly you were very confident in the idea, but were other people like, what is she talking about? Like, this can't be that big of an issue. Because it just like you said, it was like a needle in a haystack. It wasn't really like a problem for most people, or like at least it was, but like nobody really cared about it to do anything about it up until this point. So did it take like convincing, or were people just automatically on board when you had the idea?
No, that's a great question. Well, I was raising money in 2019. So this was pre-pandemic. And so a lot of people think it came out of maybe the pandemic, but no one really understood UVC light, right? It was like, does it burn the baby? Is it dangerous? And then fast forward to today, we don't get very many questions about UVC light. So that's really shifted for us in terms of understanding that technology just because of the pandemic. But I would say that every single person I told was like, wow, yeah, amazing. I want that. I think the challenge for us, transparently speaking, is that parents, child caregivers want it, babies certainly want it, but will the businesses pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Will they and create that guest amenity? So it's really like everyone was like, this is brilliant, this is amazing. But then it comes down to like, it's for parents, but it's also purchased by someone else,
Yeah. And then did you have, while you were doing all of this, were you just like absolutely confident throughout every single step? Or were there any points where you were like, what am I doing? Or is this actually a good idea? Like, where did that like confidence come from to be like, no, 100%, like this is going to be like the next like Shark Tank idea?
Right. Hold on. Is that loud? Can you hear that?
No.
We're like, okay, someone just turned, we have some construction going on. So I just want to make sure my audio is okay.
Yep.
No, I certainly was not confident throughout the entire thing. I think the 2 characteristics I had were optimism, and I was incredibly naive, which actually really helped. I think if I knew how difficult it was going to be, I probably never would have done it. And so I think I was lucky in that I was like, okay, like, sure, of course we can build an 83-part diaper changing table that requires electrical and mounted on a wall in Starbucks. It's like I really was so passionate and confident, but then also again had like unrealistic optimism and some naive behavior. But I think that's what it really takes for entrepreneurs, because otherwise, if you do get too scared or too pragmatic or risk averse, it's not going to happen. I think it's a certain characteristic. But I mean, there were many positions we were in where we announced it, we started selling it. We didn't even have product. We were still going through testing. Was it going to actually work? I mean, we were like moving. And I think it was really just, again, having this mindset of like, we will figure it out. And I always say, I brought on my first team member is my co-founder and COO. Her name is Brittany Heiser. And I think maybe every other day, at least, we say, we'll figure it out. Or like, we always figure it out. And we do, and we've made mistakes. And of course, we've, maybe done things we should have done differently. But I think that's just this constant phrase we say to each other all the time. Just, we'll figure it out. We always figure it out. And I think that's just, you just have to believe in that,
Yeah. And I feel that the point of like growth that I see a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in is because they think they do have to have it all figured out. And I'm like, if that's your mindset, you're literally never going to get anywhere. Because at a certain point, you just have to take action. You just have to do it and be like, this is the vision. I'm really confident in the vision. I may not know how we're going to get there, but we'll figure it out regardless. And we're just going to keep going. But I see a lot of people get tripped up, especially when they have seen a little bit of a success and then they're like, well, I need to keep this going. And I'm really afraid of making mistakes. So I just have to have every single step planned out. And that can be like a downfall.
Agreed. No, I always call it roughly right. It's like, you don't want it to be, sloppy, but it doesn't need to be perfect. It's like, just get it out there, like get the website out, just go, make it roughly right. You can always tweak it. I also will say, you notice things more than anyone else will, right?
100%.
Like I'm like, gosh, I wish that was like a little bit different over here, but no one else will notice it. So I also think that you have to kind of get out of your own perfection mindset of just, like people will love what you do. And even if you see something wrong, then you can adapt it over time, but just get it out there. And so I think that's something too that we've learned along the way as well.
Yeah. And I love that you were like, I from the get-go had a team or at least advisors, because you do get in your head. It's really hard to create anything and be in like a silo by yourself. Like you need people to like bounce ideas off. You need somebody to be like, am I going crazy or am I just being like a perfectionist? Like you need someone to talk to. So that's something I even like love working with my clients with, because I'm that person for them, just like you have a team for yourself, because it gets lonely, it gets hard, and you feel like you're losing your like goddamn mind sometimes.
Yeah, I think lonely is a really good word. I mean, I've lost my goddamn mind at this point, so we can just call that a spade a spade. Lonely is really the right word, because what you are going through, people really can't understand, right? No. We talk to a lot of female founders and it's fun to like commiserate, but your situation is just so bizarre and unique that even it's hard for me to tell my husband about it now, who, we talk every day, obviously, but it's like, it's like, you kind of just don't get it, like, unless you're in it. And so I think that's like to have, a co-founder, a team, because it's just, you're moving so fast. It's just no one else understands. And in terms of being, lonely, it's also just, all you do is project the confidence, right? And you share, it's so important to share on social media, the success, the wins, the awards, the new customers, and the growth. And that is important. And I love that. I love speaking on a podcast. I love being involved with customers, but you do kind of feel like a wind-up doll that sometimes of like, selling, everything's fantastic. And then behind the scenes, you're like, well, shit, I have to file my taxes. Like those parts came in out of spec. But, there's so much behind the scenes. And so it's kind of this weird, like dual personality that, again, unless you're really in the business, you kind of don't experience. So I think it's very important to build that team. And then also, like you just said, is, surround yourself with people who have skill sets that you don't. So I was up front of this is, I came from the kitchen, right? Obviously I've had a career that's more multifaceted than just cooking, but I love selling. I love marketing. I love brand development. Like I don't know anything about sourcing metal from India. Right? Like, and so find your people and your skill set, whether that's an employee or just contractor or advisor who can help you, and then stick to kind of what you're good at. Obviously founders wear a million hats from day one for a while, but I would say that's been important too. Like acknowledge what you don't know how to do or also don't like to do, because you're going to be slow at it if you don't like doing it. So find someone who's faster who does.
Yep. I always talk about how like stop expecting people to hold space for you that never signed up to, right? So like I'm sure your husband is super supportive, but like you said, he just like doesn't understand certain things. And it's also like not his job to understand certain things. Like he didn't sign up to be like the COO or the CFO. Like it's not his job to like hear about all these things. Then that really your COO or advisor or somebody in your actual team is one actually more equipped to talk about with and actually has
For
better
sure.
advice for. Yeah. But oftentimes what I see is people almost like trying to find like the cheaper way out, be like, well, I could invest in this advisor or this team member or even this paid community. But instead I'm just going to use like my friends or even like my business friends as like a sounding board. And like, once again, they didn't sign up for that responsibility. So the results you're going to get from that is going to be night and day.
For sure. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's, that's true, because it's like everyone wants to help, but then, it's just like networking, like, let me introduce you to someone. And then you're not really a priority and they forget and they don't. So you really do need to find the people who are really invested in the business. And then really, I like what you said there too, about just the space. It's like, they just kind of don't get it and you don't expect, and so, and I think it's hard to just beyond, I love the life of an entrepreneur. I mean, I really do. I think I feed off this, I can't imagine doing anything slower paced, but it is, again, that back to kind of word lonely of, Pluie comes first. And that's hard to say as a woman, as a wife, as a mom. Obviously, I would say my kids come first. And then I would say kids, Pluie, my husband. Sorry, I love you. I think it's like I canceled a lot on friends, I've do a girls trip, or it's like I just can't, it's like I've changed my dentist appointment 10 times because a meeting comes up. It's like Pluie has always been this priority for the past few years. And again, that's hard to explain, I think, to friends and to family and to people.
Yeah.
Just like, sorry, but like I can't plan a vacation in Labor Day because like I don't even know where the heck I'm gonna be in Labor. I can't even. I was laughing at the dentist. They're like, let's make your 6-month appointment. I'm like, what? Like I don't know what I'm doing in 6 days at this point, So that can get hard too. And so if anyone, you're not alone in that. It is hard to, even just with friends and with social engagements, like I can't do this mom's night out because I'm exhausted or I have to work, so.
Yeah. Have you struggled ever with saying no? And two, have you gotten better at saying no? Because it seems like you have.
Well, yes, I've struggled, but then my what I'm not good at is I'll say yes to everything and then I'll cancel. So sorry. So I'm getting better though, just being like, no, I won't probably be able to do that because I'll be busy, versus like, yes, let me try. I'll try and make it. And then like that day, like, gosh, I can't come out tonight. Or, so I think I still am holding on to the life of like wanting to do everything. But I am getting better at saying no. I'm also getting better at recognizing, I really don't like Monday morning meetings, or I don't want to meet afternoon. Not that I'm not working, that's for sure, but more like I've learned my schedule a little better so that I can kind of feel like, here's when I feel on or off, or in terms of communication outwardly. And that's been a little better.
Yeah. So if somebody has, I mean, obviously you came from experience of working around products, but if somebody doesn't have any experience around products, how would a normal person get started with product innovation? Because I feel like for me, if like I have ideas all the time, but I would honestly not know where to start with like finding like a team or resourcing or even like market validation fit. Like I would have no idea where to start.
Yeah, so because of my network at Gravity Tank, I was a culinary designer, but we worked across platforms, so did everything from tech to, whatever. So I was able to tap into that network to find an industrial designer, which was the first step for me. And so if you have a product idea, I would say, first step is like, can I actually make this, right? And it is very different. Can you make it on, a beautiful rendering, and can you actually manufacture it? So it was very important up front to have the industrial designer to bring it to life visually and from the feature standpoint, as well as for us, an engineer with electrical experience, to see, can you actually manufacture this, right? And put it in a more CAD file. I worked out of, there's a location in Chicago called M Hub. So it's a design kind of community. So I think there's a lot of those around to look into, but freelance is the way to go, and be really upfront with your budget. Hey, I have this idea. Like I didn't even have a sketch. It was just like, can we make a diaper changing table, more comfortable, more convenient, and cleaner? Like you have this, you don't need much more than that to go to someone like that. And here's my budget. Like, I only want to spend $1,000 working with you and understand this. And then from there, again, it started to escalate when it's like, wow, look at what we can do, and look at how we can manufacture it. I will say, again, speaking of learning along the way, in this stage of the business, I didn't even know anything about the safety and certification process, and I didn't know about ADA standards. And so later learning as we continue to prototype, et cetera, our tables can only protrude 4 inches from the wall because that's to comply with ADA. But I didn't know that when I had an idea, and so it's like you just have to do kind of pivot and learn. And so that's kind of where I started. And in terms of research, I think I held the idea on too close for a long time. I wish I had went out to people right away, even with my original designs, and even to friends and say, what do you think of this? But I think it's a combination of the fear of people taking the idea or the fear of rejection, or like, what are you doing? Like, you write your cooking and like, why are you making a table? And so I wasn't ready to kind of like put that out there. And then once we finally did, again, there was just so much more support. So I would encourage people to do it early on.
Yeah. So right now, are you in mass market stores, or is it more just like offices and things like that?
No, we are mass market. So we launched in 2021. So 2 years ago, we installed our first table. We're now in over 20 states nationwide. We have hundreds of tables deployed all across every market segment. So from a zoo to a grocery store to an airport. We're in 6 airports. We have 2 about to install, but DFW is one of our biggest right now. We're in different ballparks across the country, including the Chicago White Sox Stadium, as well as Globe Life Field, so Texas Rangers and San Diego Padres. So stadiums have been big for us. And then we're really excited about some of our larger enterprise accounts. So piloting with people like CVS, Equinox, much bigger businesses and brands, which will really help us grow and plan our growth as we see their construction, their renovation, their builds in the future. And then it's very important for us to focus, though, on the smaller spaces. I have 2 calls today with a peek and play, and then a play space in Princeton, just, different places that say, hey, we cater to children, to babies. What's this all about? So it's us still validating, though, our market in terms of who is interested, who cares, and then who has the budget for it. So that's still something we are navigating, because a lot of people are like, oh, these should be in public libraries, but, is that something that they can afford? And so we're trying to figure that out. And my dream, of course, as we grow, is that once we generate enough revenue and have larger customers, we can offer such discounts to the smaller organizations so that we really feel Pluie belongs in every restroom for every type of family in every community, and it's not something that needs to be in just a premium health club, but it should also be in a YMCA. So that's something that's important to us as we grow.
Awesome. And is that a part of like your 5-year vision, or what is the vision that you see for Pluie in the long run?
I mean, I can't even make a dentist appointment in 6 months. I don't know.
That's true.
No, I mean, I would say at this point, what we're very excited about is we've gained traction really quickly. We've received quite a bit of awards and recognition. And so Pluie really has become a representation of health and safety. It's become more than a changing table, but a business saying, hey, we want to create the best possible guest experience. And this is why we're putting these in our restrooms. And because of that, I want to build that brand equity for Pluie to grow into a larger product portfolio. And so our dream would be to not only be B2B, not only be in restrooms and spaces in public for parents, but how do we create consumer products for parents to support them on the go and build a much bigger brand? And so although we need to be hyper focused on the diaper changing table, because we're still just generating revenue, we're still getting, really launched into the country. We do want to start exploring how to build this brand, to make it more visible, to make it, a bigger story. And that's really my dream, is sort of to be the Sarah Blakely or Spanx of diaper changing tables, and have us grow and hopefully within the next few years be in a position that we can really bring on a larger team to grow faster, and or of course partner with other companies.
And how big is your team right now?
4 of us, including me. So, and that's new. We just hired our first 2 employees. It's always been me and Brittany from, the beginning. And then, so she came on right in 2020, but I left my job in the kitchen. And then it was us for the last couple of years. And we brought on a director of sales about 6 months ago, which is obviously, I would say, the most important first hire for anybody after you're kind of, whether a team of co-founders, is just, sales should be the backbone of a business in the beginning. And we need everyone all hands on deck generating revenue. And so bringing on a director of sales who's living and breathing sales every single day, all day, is really important, because prior to that, it was me and Brittany just selling, but also like doing taxes, sourcing parts, posting on Instagram, like, just all the stuff. And so that was exciting for us to have someone really dedicated to it. And then our fourth hire, so there's four of us, is a director of brand. And so she's going to oversee all of our marketing, work with our PR team, and then actually really help with that product portfolio expansion so we can bring Pluie into the consumer space.
Yeah. I think people are always shocked when, especially something with like a product-based brand, they're like, oh, they must have like this whole team. And I'm like, honestly, no, a lot of startups, even like before this, I worked at a startup. Like, yes, we were 100 people, but by that time, the startup had already been around a couple years. So that wasn't weird. But even me, like, it's me and like two other people. Like, you don't actually need a lot to get started. So I think it's one of those things that like you can literally get started with zero. It's just like a mindset and a perspective shift of like, I will do as much as I can, and then I'll figure it out along the way. And that's when I'll add on people.
And I would really encourage people to not hire for a while, because I think we were more successful with contractors because things change so quickly. It's like,
Yes.
when we need a freelancer to make a website, well, we don't obviously need like a marketing director when we're just getting started, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we need someone to help with this. And so we've had people come and go as needed and just use contractors, freelancers, because again, your business just continues to shift, that unless you're bringing on someone who can wear the like millions of hats and do everything, it's like, just use, freelancers, use interns, use students, use Etsy, use whatever to just kind of do what you need to do. And then you'll know when it's like, okay, we need a full-time salesperson, right? But I would just really encourage, like, for the first couple of years, we didn't have anyone. And honestly, I think it worked really well.
Yeah, because you've had to figure it out by yourself. Like you didn't have another
Yeah.
option. Yeah. Were there any times where something didn't work out like the way you expected to, and it was almost like a mini failure, and you were like, oh God, okay, here we are again. Okay, I just have to keep on going. Was there any points in time where you were like, oh, how much more of this am I going to have to take?
Yeah, no, I recently was saying, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, am I still doing this? are we still here? And I think that's a big myth people have, is that like, oh, start a business, like the startup culture is so sexy, like you'll sell and get acquired in 3 years.
Nope.
Yeah, it's like, no, like that's not how it works. And I honestly felt that way in the beginning. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. I'll get a big customer, the competitor will acquire us or whatever. And so that's when I certainly learned, is that, things just take a lot longer, and obviously are more expensive than you anticipate. But I think, again, it takes a lot of grit and persistence, just because it is kind of a grind. And there are days where I'm like, oh my God, are we still doing this? But we've had a lot of highs and lows. And I think that's one challenge too, as an entrepreneur, is that like, you get an exciting email like, oh my God, they're buying 57 tables. And then the next email in your inbox is like, your parts from India didn't ship. And it's like, what? Now we don't have parts. Right? So it's just like constant highs and lows, like little ones. And so that's too where it's like, gosh, like this is hard, And I think recently we've had a few moments just the past year of disappointment in things. It's also incredibly personal. And I think that people have too, of like, it's just a business, and it's really not, it's very much become my life, not only my livelihood and my future, but my career. My kids are watching it. I want them to feel proud. Our investors are all friends. I mean, it's like my husband's best friend from college, and my next door neighbor, and my OB who delivered my babies. I mean, it's so intertwined in my life, and that too adds a level of pressure. So I think when I felt failure or disappointment, it's not about Pluie. It feels very much about,
Yes.
oh, I messed up, or I failed, and I didn't do what I wanted to do. But again, then next call is selling to someone new, and you like turn that smile on, and you just have to get good at it. But that's where it is, this underlying kind of stress of an entrepreneur is very personal.
Yeah. And how do you manage to get through it? Because I know like a lot of people, they struggle with like almost like nervous system regulation, where they can't handle the highs and lows. Like it physically like affects them. So just for like your mental health, like is there any kind of like boundaries you have set? Kind of like you were like, I know me, and like I do not do calls between these times because I just can't, like this is not going to be good for me. So what are the kind of boundaries you have in place to like not lose your goddamn mind between the highs and lows?
I know, that's a great call. So, I mean, I feel I'm an adrenaline junkie, and so it's like I just want the highs, and I love the wins. And so sometimes too, that's hard, where it's like a few weeks pass and I don't have a big win, and I get
Yes.
like, that's not normal. Like, wins aren't constant, but I do have that.
Yeah.
I think how I set boundaries, or I make sure I kind of check in with myself, is certainly, again, with Brittany, like I need her. And I think if you're alone right now with an idea, great, explore as far as you want, but like find that person, that co-founder, or that team member, because again, you need someone to call and be like, we'll figure this out, right? Because otherwise you're talking to yourself or my dog. So I would say make sure you have that person, and they don't have to be part of your company if you don't have an advisor or a family member, but as we mentioned earlier, it's just at some point, no one understands what you're going through. And then obviously just, I try and check in with what makes me happy outside of work and make sure I'm doing it. So whether that's for you, exercise, I go in the pool, I cold plunge every morning. So I am a immersion person. And someone once told me, you probably like it because it's the 5 minutes where you're not thinking about something else. It's because you're so cold. It's like you can't multitask. However, the other day I was sitting in the freezing water and creating a reel because I needed to post on Instagram. So I was like, this is therapeutic. So that's good. And then also, whenever I want time to myself away from Pluie, which feels hard because you feel like you always need to be working. And I will say, like, I do not work around the clock, but I think around the clock. And I think that's very different. You cannot be at your computer working around the clock. It's not feasible. Mentally, you're not there. But I'm driving my kids to McDonald's and I have an idea, right? Like if it's your business, your baby, you are constantly thinking, but you don't need to feel guilty about taking your kids to lunch and not being on your computer. And so I have to remind myself of that. And then also make sure I do whatever makes me happy. And if that's, again, shopping for you, whatever it is, like, do you. And I love my kids' birthday parties, and I love Valentine's and crafts. And like, it might sound silly, but it's so therapeutic for me to make their Valentines. And of course I'm making them and have ideas for Pluie, but just check in and do whatever makes you happy, and don't do what you're supposed to do, right? It's like, oh, make sure you like meditate and go on a 30-minute walk. Like,
Yes.
I don't want to, I want to make Valentine's. So it's like
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Like morning routines work for a lot of people, but a couple of my clients were like, I absolutely hate morning routines. Stop forcing me to do a morning routine. Like, and I'm like, absolutely. Like, you should find what gives you peace, not what everybody else is telling you that gives you peace.
For sure. And it could become harder for me when I first obviously launched the business. I just had one baby, and then Claire came along. She was pretty easy in the beginning. They just kind of keep them alive. And so I would put the kids to bed and like get back online. And I found more and more recently, with them being 3.5 and 5.5, just more of the parenting, the mental gymnastics. It's, I'm wiped at the end of the night. And that became very frustrating to me. And I then said, okay, that's okay, right? You can be mentally tired at the end of the night. How do you then wake up earlier? It's like, just again, don't shame yourself, right? For things that come up in your life, and just, kind of pivot, again, constantly pivoting to it. Like, what makes you feel good?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's 2 questions I ask everybody. And that is, the first one is, what is something that you value that you didn't before?
Oh, I love that question. What is something you value that you didn't before? I will say, I really value the support that I have been given throughout my life that I think I never really recognized until now. Whether that's internally with our team, whether that's random people on LinkedIn messaging me saying, hey, I used to know you, or hey, I know this person. How can I help? How can I help? I cannot tell you how many times people have said, how can I help? And I think obviously throughout my non-traditional career, that was happening. Like, people were always like, networking and helping, but I never really recognized it until then launching Pluie. And it's incredibly, again, personal, but emotional to think about how many people have supported me, have supported Pluie and our family. And it's something I think that everyone should, value and look around and see.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Community and your network is truly everything. Like, not only in business, but in life. And then what is something you no longer value that you used to?
Well, I would say I wish I could still value it, but I really don't think I can. And that's just planning. I used to love and value, like, what are we going to do for Christmas? And like, what should we do? And, even just like plan. And I valued that consistency in my life. Like, okay, first we're going to do this. Or like, even when I was younger, like, we'll get married and then we'll have a kid. Or it's like, just kind of, I valued that structure. And now I've learned to be comfortable with that uncomfortable. Like, I just know where I'll be in the summer. I don't know where the stage the business will be at. And so it's very intimidating to me because I was such a planner and I still am in other aspects, but I've learned to like, okay, I can value and control like the kids' uniforms, but like I can't think about what we're doing for the summer. So I think I used to value that structure and that like life plan, quote unquote, for so long of like, I'm going to do this and then this and then this. And it just like went out the window and I don't know what I'm going to do in the next year. I mean, I'm not kidding. Someone once asked, a big customer, we have a 5-year warranty. And they were like, can we negotiate a 7-year warranty? And I practically want to be like, sure, I don't know where I'm going to be in 7 years. Great. You want a 10-year warranty? You can have one, right? Like the unknown is so hard in this stage of a business. And so I used to value that and I've gotten much more comfortable not needing to value that planning and that, that consistency.
Oh, I love that. I feel like everybody struggles with that, including me at times. I'm like, all right, just one day at a time. I just need to make it through this week. And then I can think about like the next quarter.
Seriously. And it becomes not even just like week, quarter, but I mean, I was scheduling a meeting for next week. And I was looking at my calendar and I'm like, oh, I want to do it before I have this meeting because this meeting might be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, I don't even know how that meeting's going to go. And I'm nervous for it. So I want to schedule a sales call before it. So I'm in a good mood until after.
Yes.
It's like not normal, but that is where we are, in this type of environment.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And if anybody wants to find you, where can they find you or Pluie?
Yes, please follow us on social media. We're trying to grow our Instagram and LinkedIn presence. It's Hello Pluie. Also, we'd love if you see diaper changing tables in the public restrooms or you see places without them, feel free to take a picture and send it to us. You can DM us or you can share it and we'll reshare, but we're trying to build this community of people supporting our mission. And then of course you can find more information at hellopluie.com if you want to purchase one for your public restroom.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you. And I just love this. So I appreciate you having me.